Hey guys, welcome to the Confirmation 1 makeup lesson for December 19th, 2010. Um, this week, right, so it was just about 6 days before Christmas. So it was the Christmas lesson. We talked about Christmas, but the thing is that it also is in the flow of everything, so we talk about Christmas also in terms of how it fits into the whole plan of salvation. Because if you remember, we talked about how in week 1, the first lesson, how just using reason, using your mind alone, nothing else, we can know that a creator exists. We can know that something exists that has no beginning and which is all powerful and made everything else. We can know that. We can't know much more than that without that thing revealing itself to us, because reason can only take us so far in that regard. Just like you can use reason to know that there are other human beings around, but you can't know much about them without them telling you about themselves. What do they like to eat? What do they like to do? They have to show you. And then we talked about how God made man, and He made man to share His love with us. He made us to be happy. We're called to be happy. That's what He wants to give us, to love us. But He's not going to force Himself on us, so He gives us a choice, right? Because that is what love is. It allows choice. And then we talked about how man chose to be apart from God. We talked about the fall of man, the choice against God. And so it's important that you understand all of this. And so remember, if you don't, go ahead and, if you don't remember, watch all the videos. Watch all of the makeup lesson videos I did, because they're really quick treatments of this. But this time we talked about Christmas. And so here's the situation that we find ourselves in, having gone through all of that. We find ourselves in a situation where what you have is you have man, okay? All right? And you have God, right? And man has said, well, I don't want to be with God. Man has put this barrier up and said, God, I know you want to give me your love. You want to do these things. I want what I want. Right? So there's that sin, that selfishness. And then, of course, there's all these other things that man has. You know, there are all the things that we see every day, right? There are trees, and there are, roads, and there's dirt, and there are cars, and pants, and there are chickens, and there's chalk. And these are all silly examples. But the point of it is that right now, there's all these other things, right? Including things that we take joy in. We try to find happiness in these things. And not that these things are bad. They're all good in their own way. Food. Some people find happiness in food. Hey, look, some people go ahead and they find happiness in sex. There's things, right? All the stuff we own. So like there's iPads, and there's TVs, and there's things like that. All these things, in the right way, well, they can be good. The problem is this, is that this is not all there is to it. It's not just that you have man with all these things, and he says, and I don't want God, so I made this wall. Because we all know that at a certain point, there is this thing that happens to everybody. This line that happens to everybody, right? It's called death. Here's man. He's got all these things. man dies. We die. Human beings die. And so here's this line, and down here I'm going to write what it's like after death. Now, remember, God wants to share his love with man, and God is infinite. He's eternal. He makes man, he makes us, human beings, immortal. We go on forever. Because how else can we receive so much love? And furthermore, what happiness is there if it ends, right? You know how on a Sunday, even though you're enjoying the day off, you always have that feeling like, I have to go back to school tomorrow? Well, that's the same thing, is that if God gave us perfect happiness, but it had some end point, you could never really enjoy it. So it goes on forever. But all these other things, roads and TVs and chalk and iPads and trees and food and chickens and things and pants, dirt and sex, those things aren't eternal. They don't last forever. But people do. And of course God does. And so here you have the situation after death. You have man and you have God, but man's put this line. And there's just this loneliness, and it's total loneliness. And that is the definition of what hell is. It's to be separate from God. It's to be alone, totally alone. And you know how terrible it can be to be alone, especially for long periods of time. So being alone forever is bad. It's not good. And God knows this, and he wants man to have the chance. He wants us to have that chance to turn around and say, we do want you. We do want to be with you. Because if you could do that, well, what happens? Well, man's not alone anymore. Man's with God. Right? Along with all the other people who are there. Some people feel like, well, I'll be a bad person, I'll go to hell, but I'll spend hell with my friends. It doesn't work that way, because this is what happens when you're totally selfish. All you want is things, and you want what's for yourself. Ultimately, what that leads to is really yourself. Because even if you have a bunch of people being selfish, well, they're just going to want to be off on their own to themselves. That's what it comes down to in the grand scheme of things. In the end, when you really think about it, if you really just are selfish and do wrong throughout your life, that's the mindset that we all will work ourselves into, especially when there's nothing else around. So here's the problem, though. There are two problems. There are two problems with God just saying to man, well, okay, do you want to be with me? I asked you once, you said no. Do you want to be with me? Do you want my love? Do you want my happiness? And those two problems are very important. The first is justice. When people said no to God, there was a wrong in that. There was an evil in that. God is perfectly good. We owe everything we have to him. He made us. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't even be here. And he says, here, I want to give you this goodness. And they said, no, we want to take what we want and push aside. So we want to take the good things you've given us, food and warmth and all these good things. We don't want to have anything to do with you. It's like on Christmas when you get a present, okay? And if you just want the present, but you don't want to have anything to do with the person that gave it to you. That's what it's like, and there's a wrongness to that. And even though God is willing to forgive that, he also respects the fact that justice is important. And that wrong needs to be made up, just like all wrongs need to be made up. The second thing that is wrong is that we were made to live with God in our souls, to have God with us. But sometimes, what happened is when man rejected God, well, he existed for a period of time without God. And just like a car was designed to run with oil in it, if you run a car without oil, the car breaks, doesn't work right. Human beings running without God, we don't work right anymore. Right? That's why we're tempted to sin. Think about it. Think about all the things that you have done in your life that are wrong. Think about the times when you're looking at something and you know it's wrong, but you do it anyway. Whatever it happens to be. Whether you stole something small, or you were really nasty to somebody. It doesn't make sense, does it? That we say to ourselves, well, I know this is not a good thing to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. Why do we do that? If you really think about it, it doesn't make sense. But the reason that we do that is because we've been running without oil. We've been running without God. So our, what we call human nature, what it means to be human, is damaged. Doesn't work right. And so things that don't make sense happen with us because we don't work the way we're supposed to. So God does two things, or he does one thing really to fix this. That justice, God's infinite. He's eternal. No human being is going to be able to make up to him. He's going to make up the justice that needs to be made up. So what does he do? He does this one thing that takes care of both these problems. He becomes man. He takes on man. The second person of the Trinity. Remember we talked about the Trinity. Okay? He becomes man in the person of Jesus. And then Jesus, when at Good Friday he dies and he offers his life, well, he's making up for that justice. He's done nothing wrong his whole life because he's God, so he's not sinned. He's a perfect human who does work right, so he's not tempted in all these ways. And because he's God, he's infinite, but because he's a man, and he's able to, on man's behalf, make up what we did wrong. And he does that to repay the justice. And the second thing that he does is by having perfection, by having God joined to a human being, without getting into all the technical, theological, philosophical details, you know what it does? It fixes that human nature. So it enables us, it allows us to grow as human beings and to improve ourselves and to start to fix ourselves so we do work right. Doesn't mean that everybody, just because of Jesus, automatically is perfect, but it means that the possibility exists. Because you had perfection, eternal, infinite perfection of God, united to a human being. It reached down and pulled up that human nature and fixed it. And that's what happens at Christmas. We celebrate when Jesus Christ is born. God become man on Christmas. That's what we celebrate, is that he's born. And so, one, our nature is able to be repaired because of that incarnation. That's what it's called when God becomes man. It's called the incarnation. He takes on what? Flesh. Incarnation. And the second thing is he sets himself up for 30 years later when he dies on the cross to take care of that justice. So that's what it's all about. It's all about Jesus coming in and wiping this out so that not only do we have after death, we're not alone, we're with God, and we're with each other if we accept that forgiveness from Christ. But he also set it up so that even in life, we still have our food and our cars and our trees and our iPads and everything as long as we use them in the right way. And we also have God. We have both. That's why Jesus said, I came to give them life to the fullest. That's what he's about. Life to the fullest. And that's Christmas. So remember to take the quiz, and I'll see you next time. God bless.